Angel Thomas was surrounded by love. She had a wonderful family to call her own. But the day came when her parents would have to have that talk.
I'll never forget it. His family was in town at the time, and his little niece, they were out, Angel and her were out playing, and she said, well, Angel, you're not, really any kin to us, you're adopted. So Angel came running in the house, and she said, Mama, what's adopted? And I explained it to her, and she said, well, thanks for loving me, and she ran back outside and started playing.
Well, what did that mean to you?
Oh, God, tears, I was boo-hooing. But it meant the world to me. That's all that mattered to her, is that somebody loved her.
And that hasn't changed for their little girl, who is now a young lady.
I didn't know everything, but I knew that I had a family that loved me no matter what. Even if I wasn't biologically their child, I've always been loved. And when I really accepted that and I really brought that to my heart, there's nothing that could take that away from me.
Carrie and Daryl were giving Angel a new life, but they didn't try to erase her past. They saved news clippings, documents, and pictures that captured important details of Angel's life.
I never really asked questions. My parents were, when they felt like I was ready to know, they were very transparent with me.
I just wanted to make sure when she got old enough, she would have all that, so she could put all the pieces of her life together. So I thought that was important for her.
But like any protective parent, they were cautious. They had to be careful about when and how they told Angel everything.
I knew the full story because my sister knew the family.
Carrie was worried about how Angel would react if she knew the full story.
Yes. And she did. I mean, I'll be honest, she fell apart when she found out everything.
Brandon, 15 years is a long time. What led detectives finally to a solution in this case?
We found the video from April 2013. The Guilford County Sheriff's Office was working a case that was linked to the abandoned baby found on November 12, 1999. Our cameras were inside the courtroom.
An investigator started to look at the case again, and they determined that her story was the missing link they had been waiting on.
The victim was the daughter of a girlfriend of his.
This is Michael Wilson, Angel's biological father.
I kind of heard it all back then from your parents never wanted you to, you're just a kid that they left there for dead, like they didn't want you.
That's what the kids would say to you in school.
I had to put in counseling to help her get through it, but it was rough for her. It was really rough for her. It was rough for her going to school every day and, kids picking on her. And no matter how pretty I told her she was or how much I loved her, it didn't matter at that time. All she could think about is what the kids were saying about her.
She'd have a good week or two, but then something would happen and it would, start the feelings to flood back in.
Including when Angel was asked to take a DNA test.
It was to prove that Michael, her biological father, was her biological father.
And it came out that he was?
Yes. Yes.
And this was just the beginning of the full story. The victim, Angel's birth mom, was only 13 years old. Now, several years later, she's ready to share the details you didn't see on the news.
But to the outside, he was this great man. But inside the house, we was dealing with a monster.
Middle school should be a time of innocence, years with few responsibilities. But behind Rashida Cheek's attempt to smile for the camera in her 8th grade picture was a girl doing her best to hide a painful secret.
I went to one school dance, maybe two, throughout my whole years of school. And one of them was the 8th grade dance, and I had to leave that early. I mean, I think he was even standing out there standing in the dance when I was at the dance.
Years before this picture was taken, a man came into her family's life.
That was my mom's boyfriend. Yeah, I had just turned 4 when they got together.
Michael Wilson seemed like a father figure.
He stayed on me about school. I became a great drummer, a great musician. He taught me how to do studio work.
Someone who seemed to have certain values.
We was always in church, it's the crazy part. For his mother's church, he was the keyboardist, I was the drummer. He even had me playing drums for various gospel groups.
But Rashida says Michael had a dark side.
A lot of people are gonna be mad at me because I'm doing this, but I mean, it was really torture.
Rashida says Michael mentally, physically, and sexually abused her for years.
You know, the threats of I better not tell, what's gonna happen if I tell. I'm a scared kid. I'm a skinny kid, you know. You have a man that has so much control over you.
She felt like she had no one to run to and says her mom didn't know about the abuse.
Yeah, they lived together. Him and my mom ended up splitting up, and my mother ended up on drugs, prostitution, and instead of me being bounced around, he allowed us to stay, but my brother wanted to go stay with mom. And then, unfortunately, I would go live with mom, but because of her drug use, we didn't get along. So it just became where I was forced to stay with him. I had nowhere else to go. I was a kid.
She had a roof over her head, but this house was far from a home. At 13, Rashida was pregnant with Michael's child.
He actually named her. Her name was supposed to be in his head, Loretta LaShonda Wilson.
She remembers going into labor on November 11th at his home in the Oakwood Forest community off of 29.
My water broke about 8-something that night. I was watching cartoons in the living room.
She gave birth to Angel at 1:36 in the morning on November 12th. At this point, Michael was married.
The crazy part is both of us was pregnant at the same time. So he has 2 children that are the same age. One was born in March, one was born in November. Mine was November, his wife was March.
Rashida says Michael didn't want people to know that he had fathered a child with a child, and that he mentioned taking the baby's life.
But I was like, you can't do that. Like, this is a whole baby. So we rode around for hours and hours. I remember falling asleep, I was so weak, and waking up and we're still in the car.
Eventually, the car would stop at an apartment complex off of McKnight Mill Road.
And he just takes the baby, and I just remember just sitting there, just crying, just holding my hands like this. And that was the last time I seen her.
So did he say anything when he took the baby from your arms in the car?
He started crying, he came back crying, he didn't talk to me.
He came back crying?
Yeah. Came back out in the car, cried, and just pulled off. I thought he put her in the dumpster. I honestly thought he put her in the dumpster.
Michael drove back to the house, and Rashida says
Never mentions it again.
they never talked about that day
Never mentions it again.
again.
Police say in the night cold, a newborn baby lay, hidden under one blanket.
But I always wanted to know where this child was that was snatched from me as a kid while I was a kid.
After her baby was ripped from her arms, Rashida could only wonder.
I had to go all these years not knowing if she was dead or alive and just dealing with that on my conscience. That's rough.
Even though she wasn't sure what became of the baby, she always kept count of the birthdays.
I'm going down the line like she would be 10 a day, she would be 11 a day. She would be 3, she would be starting kindergarten a day. You know, just things like that.
And sadly, after Michael abandoned the first child, the abuse didn't stop. He would father 2 more children with Rashida while she was a teenager. Those children, a daughter and a son, are now 17 and 14 years old. Rashida told me there were times when the trauma was overwhelming.
Like, I feel really bad. Like, I shouldn't have let him do that. What is it I could have done? I went into depression.
Eventually, someone would step in. Rashida's friend found a story her daughter had written.
The characters in the story was basically our life going on. And, you know, it was about a girl getting pregnant, about somebody in the family and stuff, but the name of her story was the pregnancy pact.
That friend was concerned enough to call Child Protective Services. People looking into the case noticed Michael was paying child support.
Who is he to you? And I'm like, he's my stepfather. That's my mom's ex-boyfriend. And they're like, well, what's going on? How's he there? What's going on? So from there, I mean, you have no choice. It's there. You're on the birth certificate, everything. So, I mean, I was just honest.
Michael was arrested in 2013 in connection to the then alleged sexual assault of a 13-year-old, who we now know is Rashida. But he was not the only one taken into custody.
Michael Wilson and his wife Antoinette have been together for over 15 years. Now they're spending time together in jail.
Antoinette is not Rashida's mother, but they all live together.
The victim continued to live with Wilson even after he stopped dating her mother and married Antoinette. Investigators say the abuse continued until 2003 when the victim moved out.
Was able to finally move away. Like, it took me getting a job, selling cologne and perfume to get away.
Antoinette was arrested on aiding and abetting charges. Antoinette's cousin, Monica Coley, was in the courtroom that day. She told Fox 8 Antoinette has learning disabilities and was brainwashed.
I just think that Mike Wilson is a sick person, and he takes advantage of people like Antoinette.
She's mentally challenged, and throughout the whole process, I begged them to not do anything to her. I begged them to not lock her up, not press charges on her or anything, because she was a victim just as well as I was.
As for Michael, he's serving a life sentence at the Moore Correctional Institution in Greene County. We pulled his record. You can see the list of sexual offenses dating back to 1991. Next to November 12, 1999, you can see where it says child abuse.
When I was younger, I was angry, and I feel like I'd probably go back and forth with my parents a lot about it. But as I got older, I just kind of learned that God does things for a reason, and I was supposed to end up here with my family, and I don't question it.
Rashida was there when Michael was sentenced.
He didn't say anything to me. He speaks when he does call the kids, but I still haven't gotten an apology.
Fox 8 contacted Michael to request an interview. He responded to our letter. He declined our request and asked us to please leave him alone.
But you still have never heard him say, I'm sorry for abusing you or what I did to you or taking the baby. He's never said, I'm sorry.
No. I want the apology because deep down from the bottom of your heart, you know, you do apologize for what you did to me. Not because of anybody else, but because you really mean it.
I asked Angel's parents if they ever wanted an apology.
No, not at all.
I don't want to see him.
Not at all. All I want is what I got, and that's a beautiful young lady.